My boss once called me just a coder, as if years of late nights and dreams could be summed up in 2 words. I can still hear Martin's voice echoing around that glass-walled conference room, even after everyone had left, and I sat there, gathering my scattered notes, pretending his words hadn't landed as hard as they did. Sometimes, I think the things people say in passing are the very fuel you need to build your own fire. At the time, though, all I felt was small. It was a gray, drizzly spring in Seattle, and the rain seemed determined to seep into everything: the sidewalks, the corners of our open office, even my mood. Most mornings I'd arrive early, stepping over puddles in my worn sneakers, juggling a tote bag filled with snack bars, my old laptop, and a tangle of charger cords. The office always smelled faintly of cold brew and wet jackets, keyboards already clattering by the time I slipped in. My desk was easy to find: a riot of sticky notes, earbuds, and a small spider plant that Jordan gave me for my birthday. The little green shoots were stubborn, reaching for the light, even on those endless gray mornings. I'd spent months perfecting Nevera, a logistics AI system I truly believed could save companies millions by predicting delivery routes. Every line of code felt like a piece of me. Countless evenings hunched over my laptop at the kitchen table, eyes bleary, the city outside my window humming with quiet determination. In that season, the world was just beginning to come back to life after COVID, and hope mingled with exhaustion everywhere you looked. I thought maybe this was my moment. Presentation day arrived like a knot in my stomach. The team gathered, most of them half watching, half scrolling their phones. Martin leaned back in his sleek office chair, arms crossed, that signature smirk never far from his lips. I'd rehearsed my slides dozens of times. Nevera could streamline deliveries, cut fuel costs, and improve customer satisfaction. I started, clicking through the visuals I'd built from scratch. "We're not here to build science fiction, Ava," Martin interrupted, before I could even finish my sentence. The room went silent. Sam, our COO, gave me a thin smile, supportive in theory, but I could see her glance toward Martin, following his lead. Someone from the back of the room coughed. I forced myself to stand a little straighter, swallowing the heat rising to my cheeks. By the time the meeting ended, the air felt heavier than the Seattle sky. I returned to my desk, fighting the urge to slouch. Jordan, the youngest developer on the team, rolled her chair over and whispered, "Hey, I thought your idea was great. Don't let them get to you." Her encouragement meant more than I could say, but the walls felt higher with each passing hour. It didn't take long for the new joke to catch on, just a coder whispered by the coffee machine, tacked onto emails, even muttered as I passed by. It's funny how quickly a nickname can sink into your bones. I tried to laugh it off, joining in when the others teased, but every smile felt brittle. At lunch, as I unwrapped a sad turkey sandwich in the kitchen, I overheard 2 colleagues joking about Nevera. "Idealistic Ava, off to save the world again," one snickered. I told myself not to care, but my hands shook slightly as I crumpled the sandwich wrapper. Later that day, I found a cartoon rocket pinned to the break room corkboard. In bright marker, someone had scrawled, "Idealistic Ava. Next stop, Mars." My cheeks burned, but I pulled the cartoon down quickly, stuffing it into my jacket pocket before anyone could see. I left the office late, long after most had gone home, the rain now falling in heavy sheets. My shoes squelched as I hurried to my car, but I let the drops pelt my face for a minute, grounding myself in the familiar chill. On the drive home, I put on a podcast about women in tech, stories of persistence, moments of grace. Listening, I thought about how every setback shapes you, even when it stings. "Some days, all you can do is get up and try again," the host said, her voice warm and reassuring. It sounded like advice meant just for me. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, chipping old blue polish off my nails as I stared at my laptop. I didn't want my idea to die in someone else's drawer, buried under jokes and dismissive smiles. Quietly, I copied my Navera files onto a personal drive, just in case. There was something defiant about the act, even if no one would ever know. Sometimes the only person who has to believe in you is you. I was shutting down my laptop when my phone buzzed. A message from Jordan lit up the screen. Don't give up. If anyone can build this, it's you. For a long moment, I just stared at those words, letting their warmth soak in. Then I glanced at my laptop again. Maybe it wasn't over, not yet. The humiliation was supposed to break me. Instead, it sharpened me. Sometimes, the sting of being underestimated is exactly what you need to find your edge. For days, Martin's words echoed in my head, mixing with the laughter in the break room, the pointed glances in meetings, and that little cartoon rocket I'd folded up and tucked away. There were moments when I questioned everything, my ability, my ambition, even my belonging in that office full of confident voices. But late at night, when the world quieted and my apartment filled with the soft hum of rain against the windows, something inside me hardened. I told myself, if you can survive this, you can survive anything. Seattle's early summer brought a stubborn sun that peeked through clouds, but never lingered. My days were spent at the office, typing, debugging, fixing other people's code with the efficiency of someone who knew her work was always under extra scrutiny. But the real work happened after dark. I'd come home to my tiny apartment, kick off my shoes, and settle at the kitchen table with a bowl of ramen and a sweating glass of cold brew. My desk was a chaos of notebooks, tangled earbuds, and half-finished sketches of algorithm diagrams. I was careful, no company hardware, no office Wi-Fi. Navera was mine, and I was determined to keep it that way. Pulling an AITA had become the new office shorthand for pitching something too ambitious or missing the mark. I heard it whispered by the printer, and even saw it in a Slack thread one afternoon, sandwiched between memes and gripes about cold pizza. Each time, I felt a twist of shame, but I also felt a stubborn resolve. If they were going to make me the punchline, I'd make sure my story had a second act. Jordan was my daily lifeline. She'd send me texts with ridiculous cat videos and memes about programmers running on caffeine and hope. Keep going, she wrote once, attaching a photo of a mug that read, "World's okayest coder." I kept that message pinned to the top of my phone, glancing at it during long, lonely nights. The turning point came at a client meeting with Archer and Vale. Martin led the session, doing most of the talking, while I quietly managed the demo. The conference room was sleek, glass walls reflecting city lights, the air tinged with fresh brewed coffee. As I was packing up my laptop, a man in his late 40s approached me. "You're Ava Chen, right? You wrote the predictive logic module?" he asked, his voice steady, eyes sharp behind silver-framed glasses. I nodded, a little surprised anyone had noticed. "I'm Eli Turner, CTO here. I recognized your approach. It's unlike anything I've seen." That simple acknowledgement felt like sunlight breaking through weeks of gray. Later that day, Eli sent me an email thanking me for the conversation. He asked if I could show him more of what Navera could do, just between us. I hesitated, my hands hovering over the keyboard. It felt risky, and I'd been burned before. But curiosity won out. We agreed to a virtual demo after hours. Around the same time, Sam pulled me aside near the elevators. She spoke quietly, eyes scanning the hallway. "Word to the wise, Ava. Management is watching. You don't want to get labeled difficult." Take it easy with these side projects. People are starting to talk. Her words, meant as a warning, landed like a threat. I nodded, thanked her, and walked away. That night, I added a new entry to my journal, titling the first page Code and Courage. Sometimes you have to write down the things you're afraid to say out loud. The online demo with Eli was both exhilarating and terrifying. He was patient, asking questions that proved he understood my work and respected it. As I walked him through Nevera's early prototype, his excitement grew. This could change everything, he said. For a moment, I let myself believe it too. Eli didn't waste time. He offered me a formal NDA, protection for both of us, and seed funding to develop Nevera as an independent partner. We can work together, he said. No more gatekeepers, no more dismissive bosses. You steer the ship. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the document, weighing the risk and the promise. In the quiet of my kitchen, with city lights blinking through the rain, I signed my name. For the first time in a long while, I felt the spark of hope catching. That's when reality yanked me back. My phone chimed, a calendar invite from Martin, subject line stark and unfriendly performance review, tomorrow 9 a.m. Even on paper, it read like a warning. I closed my laptop, pressing my palm against the nevertheless, she coded sticker I'd placed there months ago, a small but stubborn badge of honor. I sat back, thinking of all the times I'd wanted to quit, but didn't. In this life, my grandmother used to say, hard times teach us to stand a little taller. That night, I believed her. As I set down my pen and turned off the last lamp, I felt exhaustion pull at me, but something else, too, resolve. No matter what tomorrow brought, I knew I had a choice. For the first time in a long time, the future felt open, if only a sliver. That morning, I stood in front of Stratosync's tinted glass doors with the kind of calm you feel just before a storm, except, in my case, the storm had already broken, and I was simply waiting for the thunder to end. I'd barely slept, my mind replaying every moment of my journey here, every late night, every awkward laugh in the break room, every whispered, just a coder. I traced the edge of my badge with my thumb as I stepped into the elevator, knowing this would be the last time. The sky outside was streaked with rain, the city washed in that familiar silvery light. Upstairs, the office buzzed with the low hum of conversation. People glanced up as I passed, their eyes flickering with curiosity and a touch of sympathy. My desk, usually a clutter of sticky notes and coffee cups, was almost bare. I'd spent the previous night boxing up my belongings, leaving behind only a battered pen and the little spider plant from Jordan. At 9 o'clock sharp, Ms. Benson from HR summoned me. She sat at one end of the conference table, clipboard in hand, as Martin and Sam took their usual places at the head. The glass-walled room felt colder than usual, its polished surfaces reflecting every tense glance. Ava, we're concerned about your well-being, Sam began, her voice smooth but distant. You've seemed distracted. Maybe it's time for a break, a little time off to get your head right. Martin added, we all want what's best for you. You've been under a lot of pressure. His tone suggested he cared, but his eyes were fixed on a spot above my shoulder. Ms. Benson chimed in with soft HR speak. We can arrange for some leave and revisit your position when you're feeling up to it. For a moment, the room seemed to spin. I thought of all the work, the ideas dismissed, the pride I'd buried under polite nods. I took a breath, folding my hands to still their trembling. Thank you for your concern, I replied, but I won't be needing leave. I'm resigning, effective immediately. My voice was steadier than I expected. I slid an envelope across the table. The silence was thick. Martin's mouth twitched, as if searching for the right protest. Sam's eyes narrowed, but she didn't say a word. Miss Benson glanced at her clipboard, perhaps relieved not to have to fake more concern. I stood up, heart pounding, and left the room with my head held high. As I gathered the last of my things, the office began buzzing, rumors zipping around like summer lightning. Did you hear? Ava's leaving. Was it her idea or theirs? She was always a little intense. I caught Jordan's eye across the room. She slipped over as I zipped my bag. You okay? She whispered. I nodded, forcing a smile. I think so. Actually, I'm more than okay. She looked at me, her usual easy confidence replaced by something softer. If you need someone on your team, any team, I'm in. We hugged, quick and awkward, both of us blinking back emotion. It struck me then how few true allies you find in places like this. That evening, after a brisk walk through the rain-slicked streets, I found myself standing outside a WeWork building with the lease agreement in my hand. The space was tiny, a desk, 2 chairs, and a window overlooking a busy intersection, but to me it felt boundless. I unlocked the door, breathing in the faint scent of new paint and whiteboard markers. The click of the lock as it slid into place was the sweetest sound I'd heard in months. As dusk settled, I powered up my laptop and logged into the state's LLC registration site. Nevera Technologies, I typed, hands steady for the first time all day. A message pinged, payment received. Eli's name flashed on my phone, congratulating me and promising his support. Jordan arrived with a bag of takeout sushi and her own brand of nervous excitement. So this is it, she grinned, spreading out spicy tuna rolls and edamame on the desk. We're really doing this? We're really doing this, I replied, laughter bubbling up between us. We spent hours drafting our first roadmap, scribbling milestones on sticky notes, mapping out what Nevera could become. Every new idea felt lighter, untethered from the skepticism we'd left behind. When the building emptied, I walked Jordan to the elevator. You'll see, she said, giving my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. This is just the start. As I locked the door behind her, I paused to look around, the empty office, the rain glistening on the street below, the faint glow of city lights reflecting off the glass. For the first time in a long while, I felt something like relief. Sometimes, freedom doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly, in the small spaces you claim for yourself. Back at my desk, I logged into my new business account. There it was $150,000, the first real investment in my dream. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I whispered to the empty room, let's get to work. There's a special kind of quiet when you're building something no one else believes in, equal parts terror and thrill. The world outside our WeWork windows stayed gray and dripping, but inside, every late night pulsed with nervous energy. When you're starting something from scratch, every ping of the coffee maker, every whir of the heater in the corner, feels like the ticking of a clock counting down to your next big risk, or your next big break. Our little office looked nothing like those glossy startup launches you see in magazines. We had card tables for desks, secondhand monitors, and the remains of takeout containers stacked in the recycling bin. Sticky notes multiplied on every surface, Jordan's coding shortcuts, my reminders to breathe, Emily's cheerful doodles of pizza slices and little rockets. There were weeks when we barely saw sunlight, when ramen and cold brew became both comfort and necessity. But there was laughter too, especially on Friday afternoons, when we called a truce with deadlines, gathered around for pizza, and took turns demoing the week's progress. Emily was the first hire after Jordan. She was fresh out of college, late inks, quick with a joke, and brilliant with logistics code. She brought a new energy to the room. Her playlists filled the air with old-school hip-hop, and her try-it-and-see attitude helped us break through the stubborn walls of exhaustion and doubt. "Ava," she said once, "this is the first place I've worked where I feel like my voice actually matters." That mattered to me, too. Inclusivity wasn't just a word for us, it was a habit. Every Friday, we held coffee chats about anything but work, family recipes, favorite books, tech podcasts, memories of childhood summers in Yakima or Dallas or Hong Kong. I wanted everyone to feel safe, to know they could mess up, laugh, and still belong. Some nights, after a particularly rough sprint, I'd give Jordan a silly mug. Code and courage, it read after a week when she fixed a stubborn bug at 3 a.m. She laughed, but I could see how much it meant to her. But while we were building Nevera, Stratasync was watching. It started with a press release. Martin and Sam announced a groundbreaking logistics tool of their own. When I read the specs, my heart sank. Even the code snippets they teased in the announcement looked familiar, painfully familiar. That night, Jordan and I combed through old commits and found features eerily similar to our own. "This can't be a coincidence," Jordan said, eyes narrowed over her mug of cold brew. Eli was the first to sound the alarm. He called from Archer and Vale's sleek downtown office, his tone unusually serious. "Ava, they're pushing Stratasync's tool hard. But our execs are worried. The timing's suspicious, and frankly, their demo was underwhelming. They want Nevera exclusively now, and I agree. But be careful. Something's off." It didn't take long for Sam to make her move. She showed up at a coffee shop one drizzly morning, pulling Jordan aside with promises of a better package if she'd jump ship. Jordan told me about it as soon as she came back to the office, breathless and almost amused. Like I'd leave now? After all this. Her loyalty settled something deep in me. Sometimes, the right people show up when you need them most. Meanwhile, Ms. Harper, our lawyer, was quietly working in the background. She combed through everything, double-checking logs and source files. One evening, she called me into a Zoom room and shared her screen. "See these?" She pointed to invisible watermarks woven into our code, signatures I'd embedded months ago, mostly out of habit. "They're in Stratasync's version 2. That's your proof, Ava." The relief was immediate, but so was the anger. Before I could do anything with the evidence, an envelope arrived by courier. Stratasync's logo on the front. Inside, a cease and desist. They accused me of stealing intellectual property, demanded I stop working on Nevera, threatened legal action. I stared at the letter, stunned by the audacity, then laughed, a hard, tired laugh that tasted like victory and disbelief. The team crowded around as I read the letter aloud. Emily snapped a photo of the page. "Frame it," she grinned, "when you win." Instead, I stuck it to the fridge with a pizza-shaped magnet, a daily reminder of where we started and why we couldn't give up. That night, I checked my email before heading home. Among the flood of code updates, bug reports, and late-night memes from Jordan, one subject line stood out, "Ready to hear your side. Call me anytime." It was from Kevin Price, a local tech journalist I'd met once at a meetup. He'd never reached out before. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen, the hum of the city outside mixing with the soft whir of our old heater. Maybe this was how change began, not with a victory lap, but with a simple invitation to tell the truth. The office was quiet around me, empty pizza boxes and the lingering smell of cold coffee, my only company. I poured myself a cup, sat back in my chair, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long while, a sense of hope. Even when the odds are stacked, sometimes the right story finds its way to the right listener. Seattle Tech Week arrived with its familiar buzz panels, lanyards, and a city pulsing with talk of disruption. I walked through the conference center's glass doors, badge swinging against my chest, trying to slow my racing thoughts. Our office had changed since those first ramen-fueled nights. Now, Nivera's workspace hummed with new faces, diverse voices, and laughter that reached all the way to the elevators. The team had grown. Emily led onboarding, Chris managed cloud, and our intern, Maya, shadowed Jordan, eyes wide with wonder. But anxiety lurked beneath the surface, the kind that comes when you know the spotlight is about to swing your way. Eli's words echoed in my mind. Document everything. The truth always finds its way to daylight. It was good advice, the kind that gets you through long legal memos and longer nights waiting for justice to catch up with reality. It started with Ms. Harper filing a patent claim and a lawsuit against StrataSync. Kevin Price, the journalist, ran a piece that spread like wildfire. Suddenly my phone was buzzing with notifications. David versus Goliath. Nivera takes on StrataSync, one headline read. By lunchtime, #JusticeForAva was trending. I never expected to see my own face on tech blogs or have strangers tweeting encouragement, but there it was, impossible to ignore. Jordan popped a bottle of sparkling cider in the break room. No matter what happens, she grinned, we made it this far. For a minute, we just let ourselves celebrate. Emily stuck the lawsuit letter to our old fridge and took a selfie of us all, wide-eyed and a little shell-shocked. The real turning point came with the interview. Kevin invited me for a live Q&A, my first time facing the camera, my nerves so raw my hands shook. I sat with Ms. Harper reviewing watermarks, screenshots, and timelines until every detail felt etched in my bones. When the red light blinked on, I forced myself to remember why I started all of this. Not for revenge, but to be heard. Did you develop these algorithms? Kevin asked. I nodded and walked him through the digital fingerprints that proved our work, my work, had been stolen. The chat window exploded. People wanted the truth, and, for once, they listened. Afterward, my inbox filled with stories from other women in tech, most just looking for someone to say, "You're not alone." That meant more than any headline. Not everyone fared so well. Sam's side hustle, Ravenex, hit a wall after my testimony. Her partners dropped out, clients grew wary. I heard from a friend that Sam had gone silent, her social feeds scrubbed clean. Meanwhile, Martin was sweating in boardrooms, StrataSync's reputation slipping. Reports of code theft reached their largest client, and industry partners started canceling meetings. Rumors flew at Tech Week. Martin and I crossed paths in the lobby, his smile brittle, eyes darting away. But the spotlight wasn't just on the old guard. At the conference, I spotted Maya, our intern, clutching a stack of flyers and looking lost in the sea of neon banners. I knelt beside her. "It's always this overwhelming," I assured her. "You belong here as much as anyone." She smiled, shy but grateful. Later, she slipped me a folded note. "Thank you for seeing me. I want to be brave like you." I tucked it into my badge holder, a secret reminder that courage is contagious. The keynote came faster than I'd hoped. Eli found me backstage, hands resting lightly on my shoulders. "Own your moment," he said. "You earned it." I breathed in, let the chatter of the audience fade, and stepped onto the stage. The lights were blinding, the room packed. I told our story, not just of loss and theft, but of building something new. I showed the technical proof, walked through our results, and for the first time saw skeptics lean forward instead of away. When I finished, applause washed over me, louder than I'd dared to hope. Industry leaders approached, some I'd admired for years, asking about partnerships, pilots, investment. I spotted Jordan and Emily in the second row, beaming. Back at the office, the team celebrated with sparkling cider and pizza, laughter echoing into the hallway. Emily raised her glass. "To Ava, for proving you don't have to shout to be heard." I felt a lump in my throat as Maya handed me her thank you note, eyes shining with pride. As the night wound down, I checked my phone. One new message, formal and cold, from the StrataSync board open to acquisition talks. I stared at the screen, heartbeat steady for the first time in months. Maybe some victories are loud and some are silent. But either way, when the truth comes out, it changes everything. Spring returned to Seattle with its promise of renewal. Outside our new headquarters, cherry blossoms drifted along the sidewalks, collecting on windowsills and dotting the newly painted Nevera sign. The old Stratasync building looked different now. Sunlight poured through open windows, laughter carried across the open-plan floors, and every desk, no matter how small, was decorated with splashes of green, sticky notes, and the signatures of a team that knew it belonged. Some mornings, I paused just inside the lobby, taking in the soft hum of conversation, the buzz of new ideas floating across the space. It still caught me off guard, how quickly everything had changed, and how some things, like the resilience that got us here, never would. My office, glass-walled but now filled with plants and light, looked out on the city I loved. On the windowsill, beside a well-loved mug that read Code and Courage, someone had tucked a single cherry blossom. A year earlier, acquiring Stratasync's logistics arm would have seemed unthinkable. Yet, in the end, the deal closed quietly, pennies on the dollar, as Eli liked to say, and with Martin's name nowhere on the door. He resigned with a brief, apologetic letter, no more grandstanding, no attempt at spin. Sam slipped quietly out of the industry, her social media silent for months. As for us, we opened the doors wider. We built Nevera's culture from scratch, no hierarchy for the sake of it, no room for bias or silent suffering. I made sure of that. Weekly idea jams replaced those old, stifling meetings. The mentorship program grew, pairing junior devs with seniors, encouraging voices that once would have been overlooked. Emily ran onboarding with warmth and patience. Chris brought in his collection of vintage lunchboxes for the new break room. Maya, whose nervous questions had once mirrored my own, decorated her desk with some of my old sticky notes, messages I'd nearly thrown away in darker times. Trust your logic. Persistence, perfection. If in doubt, code anyway. Jordan, now CTO, thrived in her new role, leading workshops with humor and grace. She loved the tradition of Friday coffee chats, insisting we try every bakery in the neighborhood at least once. Her energy brought out the best in everyone, especially the new hires who, for the first time in their careers, felt their ideas weren't just welcomed, but celebrated. Eli and I hosted our first Women in Tech panel, inviting high school girls, college interns, and women from every corner of the industry. It was standing room only. Afterward, as we watched the crowd drift into the street, Eli patted my shoulder. Not bad for a kid who was once told she was just a coder, he teased, eyes kind. That phrase followed me, in some ways, all the way to the TEDx stage. When the invitation came, I nearly turned it down. Imposter syndrome doesn't vanish just because your name is on the building. But I went. I stood in front of a packed auditorium, lights bright and voices hushed, and told my story. Not as a tale of revenge or victimhood, but of what happens when you refuse to let others define your worth. In this life, I said, heart pounding, I was called just a coder. Today, I build futures. And the best ideas, especially the ones people say are too much, are always worth fighting for. The applause rose in waves, people on their feet. I saw Jordan and Emily in the front row, grinning. Even Maya, sitting with the interns, wiped at her eyes. Afterward, as I slipped backstage, a young woman approached, hands trembling. "Miss Chin," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "what if they say my idea's too much? What if I'm too much?" I recognized that fear, the same fear I'd carried for years. I reached into my bag and handed her my old Code and Courage notebook. "Then it's probably worth building," I told her. "And you're not too much. You're enough." Her face lit up, hope blooming like the cherry blossoms outside. That evening, I walked through the office as the sun dipped below the horizon. Maya waved from her desk, the sticky notes catching the light, her smile so much braver than before. The air was fragrant with spring, and outside, petals danced on the breeze. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. We had survived. We had changed more than a company. We had changed what was possible. If someone ever calls you just a coder, remember, it's only the beginning of the story. Sometimes, the people who change everything are the ones who refuse to let a single voice have the last word. Looking back at those cherry blossoms outside my window, I'm reminded how the hardest seasons can give rise to the most beautiful new beginnings. My journey taught me that sometimes the greatest victories aren't loud. They're felt in the small moments of kindness, courage, and lifting others up. If we listen with compassion and give each other a chance to grow, we can change not just our own lives, but a little corner of the world as well. Life has a way of bringing us full circle, and it's never too late to build something that matters. If this story touched you, I'd love to hear your thoughts or memories. After all, every story is richer when it's shared.